Hi there, I'm Caitlin from the Regional Foundation Center at the Free Library of Philadelphia. Getting More Out of Foundation Directory is a video series offering tips and insights into Foundation Directory. Today, I'm going to show you how to search for Grantmakers. Before we start searching for Grantmakers, here are a couple reminders and tips. Access to Foundation Directory Professional is available at the Parkway Central Library. Stop in anytime we're open. No appointment is necessary to access Foundation Directory. However, bringing a laptop is recommended as a limited number of public computers are available. Before coming to the library, you can plan your search strategy by looking at the philanthropy classification system at taxonomy.candid.org. The philanthropy classification system lists the subject terms and population groups you can search in Foundation Directory. You can also view definitions of these terms. Lastly, be sure to check out the other videos in our nonprofit resources playlist for additional tips and tricks for getting the most out of Foundation Directory. There's also a comprehensive workshop called Introduction to Foundation Directory in the playlist. Let's start searching for Grantmakers. We're going to start our search on the Free Library's website, freelibrary.org. From there, we're going to look for this blue find box, and we're going to click on the link that says databases. Once we've clicked on that link, we'll see a full list of all the databases that the library subscribes to. We're interested in the ones for nonprofits. So in this filters box, we're going to change the subject to nonprofit. I'm then going to click filter results. That will show you the 10 nonprofit resources that we subscribe to. They're listed in alphabetical order, so we'll scroll down until we see Foundation Directory Professional. I can then click on the link and it will take me to Foundation Directory Professional. On the center of the screen here, we have a search bar where you can start searching. You're welcome to put any search terms you want to into that search box and click search. But I like to show people the advanced search and filters. This link here above the search box. I'm going to click on that now. You'll then see 6 different search boxes, and this is how we can build our search. We'll start with subject area. Subject area describes the work your organization does or the specific program or project you're looking to get funding for. When you click in that search box, you'll get a drop-down list of the subject terms that you can search for. Anytime you see this little down arrow, that means there's additional search terms within that category. For example, if I expanded the human services subject term, you'll see things like basic and emergency aid, job services, special population support, and youth development. I'm going to include youth development in our search today. If you would like to search for more than one search term at once, you can do that by checking an additional search term. Once you've added a second search term, this option appears, match any or match all. If we left this as match any, it would give us a list of any grant makers interested in funding these search terms. This would give us a lot of search results though. If we change this to match all, it puts an and in between the search terms and it will give us a list of grant makers interested in all of these search terms. So we'll have fewer search results. If at any point you want to remove one of the subject terms from your search box, just click the X next to the subject term. Next is geographic focus. So this is where your organization is located or where the funding will be used. You can do a city, a county, a region, or a state. I'm going to do Philadelphia for our geographic focus. And as I start typing it in, you'll see a drop-down list with options. You'll note that there's Philadelphia County and Philadelphia City. They are the same, so it doesn't matter which one you choose. Next is population served, which describes who's benefiting from your programs and services. This is broken down by things like age groups, social and economic status, ethnic and racial groups. You don't have to include a population served in your search, but it may be useful for your specific organization's needs. So these are the 3 search boxes: subject area, geographic focus, and population served, that you'll use to do a general search to find funders interested in funding what you've put into these search boxes. I do want to just briefly mention the location search box, since people often confuse this with geographic focus. Location is tied to where a grant maker is physically based. It's essentially what their mailing address is. So if there's a funder that's based in New York, but is interested in funding youth development in Philadelphia, they're going to show up in our search results. But if we put our location in as Philadelphia, that funder in New York would not show up in our search results because they are not located here in Philadelphia. So you're always going to want to use geographic focus, and you're going to want to leave location blank. All right, so next I'm going to click on this blue search box so that we can see our list of search results. So we have just over 1,000 grant makers interested in funding youth development in Philadelphia. The first 5 grant makers that meet our search criteria shows up on the list here, but I recommend clicking this blue View All button so that we can see the full list of grant makers. Once I've done that, this Grant Makers Filters box appears, and within this box, we have the option to exclude grant makers that are not accepting applications. Now, this doesn't mean that a grant maker had a deadline of February 15th and that's since passed. Instead, it means they either pre-select who they're giving to or it's by invitation only. So it doesn't mean that those funders will never support your organization, but it usually means you'll have to reach out to them in a different way. You can see if anyone in your network or at your organization knows anyone at that foundation, or you can try sending them a letter of introduction, inviting them to apply to learn more about your organization. So if you do want to exclude those grant makers, you can check this box. It will refresh the list, and we went from over 1,000 to less than 400 grant makers. All right, so we have our list of grant makers that are accepting applications. We can see the grant maker's name, the city and state where they're located, their total assets and total giving. Those 2 numbers are coming from the most recent financial document we have on record for that funder. They're 990 and represents 1 year's worth of financial data. What's really more interesting for us, though, are these next 2 columns, amount funded and grant count. These numbers are telling us how many grants and how many grant dollars went to our specific search. So for example, the Philadelphia Foundation has given out 491 grants totaling $6.6 million for youth development in Philadelphia. Those 2 numbers are not 1 year's worth of financial data, but instead are for the full scope of the database, which goes back to 2003. The list is sorted by grant count, so whoever is given the most grants is at the top, and then it descends down from there. So let's take a look at a grant maker profile. I'm going to open up the Philadelphia Foundation's profile by clicking on their name. At the top of the profile, there are 2 things to note. We have the date when their profile was last updated and the date when their grant information was last updated. So that gives you a sense of how current the information is in the grant maker's profile. Next, we have these 3 charts that give us an overview of the last 5 years of giving for this grant maker. So the first chart is showing us the top 10 subject areas they've supported. So for our example of youth development, that falls under human services. So it's in their top 10 subject areas, and they've given almost $22 million to the general human services category. Next, we can see where their grant dollars are going. So Philadelphia Foundation is our local community foundation, so a lot of their money is probably staying in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania. But if you were looking at the profile for a funder who was not based here or who gave nationally, you want to take a look and see how many grants and how many grant dollars went to the state where you're located. This last chart is giving you a sense of the typical grant size that this funder gives out. You can see how many grants they've given in these different dollar amount ranges. This will help give you a sense of how much you could expect from this funder or how much you should ask for. Next is a list of all the grants that this grant maker has given out for our search, youth development in Philadelphia. We can also see the most common grant amount for these types of grants, $1,000. So with this list, we can see the name of the recipient who received the grant, where they're located, the primary subject of the grant, the year the grant was given, and then the dollar amount of the grant. The list is sorted by year given, so we're seeing the most recent grants first. You'll also sometimes see a little symbol next to an organization's name that says either bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. That's telling you what seal of transparency that organization has earned on GuideStar. So if you see that a grant maker is giving to a lot of organizations who have earned a seal of transparency, that should inspire your organization to claim your GuideStar profile, update it, and earn your own seal of transparency. Now, if you want to learn more about what these grants were for, you can click on the name of the recipient. A new tab will open with grant details. We'll be able to see a description, so this will oftentimes list out the program or project or initiative that this grant supported. We'll be able to see the subjects and population groups that were used to tag or categorize this grant as well. If you wanted to learn more about the recipient, you could click on their name to look at their profile. So the grant section is really helpful because it gives you a sense of what this funder has actually supported in the past and what organizations they've supported in the past, which is a great indicator of their future grant making. So I'm going to close that tab and go back to the Philadelphia Foundation's profile. If you wanted to look at a list of all the grants this funder gave out, regardless of subject or population groups, you can clear your search filters right here by clicking this little X. Once you've done that, the list gets refreshed, and then you'll see a list of all of the grants that this grant maker has given out. And you can restore your search filters by hitting restore. The next section of a funder's profile is funding interests. So these are all the different subjects and population groups that this funder is interested in supporting. Next, we have related organizations. So these are organizations that are related to this specific grant maker. We then have about the funder, which will list out background, mission statement, and any specific program areas that this funder has. Next up is other funders to consider. So based on similar patterns of giving, these funders may also want to support you, and you can click on any of their names to look at their profiles. Next is application information. So this will give you more detail about how to apply for a grant with this funder, what specific documents you'll have to submit with your application, what the initial approach is, when their board meets, if there's any specific deadlines. Next is financial information. So if you wanted to look at any of the funder's past financial documents, their 990s, those are all available here. The Who's Who section will list out people associated with the grant maker, so board members and staff members. This is a great section to look at to see if you have, if you know anyone at that foundation, or if anyone in your network knows anyone at that foundation who might be able to make an introduction for you. This is an especially helpful section if you are looking at one of those grant makers that does not take unsolicited grant requests. Again, sharing this with your network, seeing if there's anyone who can make an introduction can be really useful. Next is communication, which will provide any philanthropic news articles about this funder, as well as social media pages. We also have research papers associated with this funder provided by Issue Lab. And then at the bottom of a grant maker's profile is their contact information. So address, phone number, email, and if the funder does have a website, that will be listed here. And I always recommend checking that for the most up-to-date information. Once you've looked at a funder's profile, if this is one that you think might be a good prospect for you and you'd like to save or come back to this information in the future, I'll show you how you can save a funder's profile individually, as well as a batch of profiles. So if we go back up to the very top of the Grantmaker profile, you'll see a little tools box here. And this gives you the option to save the profile as a PDF or to email a PDF of this to yourself or anyone else at your organization. So that's how you can either download or email one profile at a time. But if you wanted to do that for a batch of profiles, we can do that by clicking the back button on our browser so that we are back to our list of grant makers. From there, we can choose the grant makers whose profiles we want to save or email by checking the box next to the grant maker's name. Now you can do this for up to 10 grant makers at a time. Once you've selected up to 10, once again, you're going to look for that tools box and then either download this as a PDF or email it to yourself. With either option, once you've selected it, you have the option to save the list or save profiles. You want to make sure that you're saving the profiles so you can get the Grantmaker profile for each of the grant makers you've selected. So in my case, I selected 6. So once I downloaded the PDF, I would have one PDF with all 6 profiles within that one PDF. So hopefully you have a better sense of how to use Foundation Directory to search for grant makers that will support your organization's work. Happy searching.